According to South Africa's Department of Employment and Labor, migrants make up 4% of the country's population and about 7% of its labor force. This is a statistic that the department gave to Parliament last year when it was briefing the Parliamentary Tourism Committee on migration trends. The Labor Minister has come under fire for the policy's quota system, and that is, of course, the new introduced employment bill. He has been accused of it being an apartheid-era job reservations. But he has defended the policy, saying it's not racist. The minister has insisted that the policy is aimed at regulating the hiring of migrant workers in the country. The policy document is out for public comment for the next 90 days, and it will be referred back to Cabinet and then to Parliament for consideration. The ministry explained that it created a document or policy framework and the legal basis to regulate the extent to which employers can employ foreign nationals in their establishments while protecting the rights of the migrants. The policy aims to achieve balance in 4 areas, which are jobs, small businesses, borders, and inspections. Today, South Africa's new employment bill is our focus. This is Business Edge. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru, Balogun. And joining me from Johannesburg, South Africa is Mathew Temlett, candidate attorney at Ulrich, Roux and Associates law firm. Thank you so much for joining me, Mathew. Welcome to Business Edge.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the conversation around the labor situation, employment and unemployment situation in South Africa has received attention for a lot of time, and it's not a situation of now. So take us through some of the challenges that the bill that's being introduced now is actually meant to address.
So the bill at this point in time, or the current Employment Equity Act that is currently in place, places the onus on employers to implement equality policies and hiring of previously disadvantaged persons, and it places it entirely in their hands to actually implement those policies and ensure that those hiring policies are fulfilled and met. The Act does provide penalties to them if they don't meet those policies, and those policies are meant to be filed and circulated with the relevant government bodies. What the amendment bill achieves is that it takes it out the hands of the employers and places it back in the hands of the Labor Department. The Labor Department now will essentially have guidelines and minimum requirements for these equity policies to be met. And if those policies are not met and their quotas are not met, then they will be facing extreme economic fines in that respect. One particular amendment that is being pushed is that the minister will be able to look at certain sectors or industries, and once consulted with certain bodies such as the Minimum Wage Council, will be able to set numerical minimum standards of hiring that need to be met in those industries and by major players in those industries. If those major players do not meet those numerical minimum requirements, they can face, as I say, severe penalties and fines in not meeting those policies. So, as I say, the biggest change that we can see here is that there is no autonomy given to the sectors or industries. That autonomy has been taken away and is now being placed in the hands of government officials who will set the minimum requirements.
So that particular change, giving the power more back to the Department of Ministry, what do you think about that in terms of the regulation and, of course, enforcement? Because one thing that the minister has said is that the ministry will no longer take a back seat and they will be much more active in enforcing whatever quota is passed with this amendment.
No, it's definitely something they see that has been an issue previously, and that they've left it in the hands of the private sector or these industries to regulate themselves and implement their own policies and to empower the communities that they're in and to hire previously disadvantaged persons. And over the period of 5 years, let's say that those quotas have not been met. The ministry has now decided they have their own 5-year plan, their own targets that they want to reach or have met within that 5-year period, and have determined that they themselves need to actually put measures in place to to have those targets met. As I said, it's clearly a trend or a statistic that they've realized that these equity policies left in the hands of the companies or sectors themselves are not just being met, or they're only being approached, in a half-hearted way that is not sufficient or to their liking per se. It may benefit. As I say, it will benefit the previously disadvantaged. One amendment that they have in the bill is that they've now included a definition for persons with mental disorders or mental illnesses, for lack of a better phrase. And those persons are now also included in the definition in the Employment Equity Act, or proposed change to that act. So it's giving the act a broader scope to apply to a larger group of people and persons. So as I say, them taking control back may very well, I think it'll put more strain on, more rigid infrastructure in place for the sectors to comply with. As I said, just leave. There's been a trend that's leaving them to their own devices. Seems to have resulted in things falling through the cracks. I think this is an attempt to cover those
Let's talk
cracks.
about that now, about the things falling through the cracks, because this issue of whether it is illegal undocumented workers or even illegal undocumented foreign workers or even legal foreign workers has been a major point of grouse for many people. And you can see some of the situations. We spoke to one of the sponsors of the Operation Dudula movement just earlier this week. We see what's happening with the economic freedom fighters, what's happening with the Patriotic Front, going to restaurants, demanding to see the list and to see how many foreign workers are working for some of these organizations. But the department says that migrants or foreigners make up 7% of the labor force. Many have said that it's easier for foreign workers to get such jobs as waiters or miners than it is for South Africans, and that South Africans, in fact, should be given priority. How big of an issue is the issue of illegal undocumented foreign workers being employed in places where should be available to only South Africans or legal documented workers?
If I understand the question correctly, it's not a matter of South Africans are getting or should be given preferential jobs in that respect. I mean, there is a labor migration policy that's been put forward now by cabinet to address this exact issue. South Africa is not immune to labor migration, which is the movement of persons for seeking out employment. South Africa is very much not immune to it, and I would imagine South Africa to some degree as well is also part and parcel to employee migration as well. So there is a policy that has been put forward that needs to be addressed by multiple organs of state. The Minister of Home Affairs, there needs to be border management control put in place. Stuff like that in that respect is attending to this new migration policy. And this policy is not put in place to deter persons coming to South Africa looking for employment. The Minister of Education put out a list of scarce of skills and jobs that we are lacking in South Africa. And this policy also encourages people to come to South Africa and seek employment. And it's something like that policy put in place that would address the issues of this misconception that the labor market is being saturated or distorted or to some or other subverted by migrant workers, for lack of a better phrase. And this policy is definitely put in place to go part and parcel, hand in hand with the new amendment bill, to actually put structures in place to provide foreign workers with the means to actually seeing gainful employment without fear of such persecution as you've just mentioned, where there's fear of undocumentation and so forth. I know the amendment bill puts forward that the minister can also put structures in place or put an equity policy in place that directly deals with foreign workers, that there must be a certain minimum requirement of migrant workers employed. That is very much a possibility that could be placed with the new amendment bill. The minister's given a lot more control and a lot more powers in terms of regulating the quotas in certain sectors and how those people are employed. As I said, the amendment bill brings the scope to a greater extent to handle the issues facing the labor market at the moment.
Okay, so let's look at some of the things inside the bill more specifically now, and this is to amend the Employment Services Act of 2014, and it's also having a number of things. The duties include: one, to ensure that foreign nationals are entitled to work in South Africa and perform the work for which they are employed only. Two, before recruiting a foreign national, employers are to take steps to satisfy themselves that there is no one in South Africa other than foreign nationals with the requisite skills to fill the vacancy. And three, that I'm taking for this conversation, to prepare a skills transfer plan in respect of any position in which a foreign national is employed. And as we said earlier, the Department of Employment and Labor is expected to take a more active role. Do you have any concerns about the main aims of the bill, especially with the criticism that it's looking like an apartheid-era reservations act or intention? Hello, Mathew. All right, it looks like some technical difficulties there with my guest from Johannesburg, but as soon as we have him back, the conversation will continue. We're going to take a quick break now, and we have a lot of conversations to be had on this introduced amendment to South Africa's employment bill. And there are those who are concerned that this is actually South Africa trying to push out migrant workers, both those who are illegal and even legal and documented in the country. And of course, there's been a call for the government to reserve general and semi-skilled jobs for South Africans. What's going to come in the next few days after the public gives their feedback, and how far will this go? That's where we'll pick up the thread of the conversation. You're watching Business Edge. Do stick around. This is Business Edge right here on News Central. My guest for today is Mathew Temlett, candidate attorney at Ulrich, Roux, an associates law firm in Johannesburg, South Africa, as we look at the country's employment bill and how it's moving forward. So Mathew, right before the break, I was asking you about some of the main aims of the bill, which is intended to amend the Employment Services Act of 2014, particularly making sure that foreign nationals are entitled to work and then do only the work they're supposed to, making sure that before you recruit or hire a foreign national, you're sure that there's no South African that can do the job, and also preparing a skills transfer plan so that eventually, I believe, South Africans will be able to take on these positions. And aside from that, some of the other issues, do you have any concerns about the main aims and objectives, or what's been listed out as the duties, responsibilities for this particular bill? Okay, so Mathew, if you cannot hear me, just try to see if you can unmute yourself. So the bill has a number of things that it's going through and hoping to achieve. But what we also know is that South Africa is going through an unemployment crisis at the moment. As of the last official rates that the country had from the statistics agency, Stats SA, the unemployment rate in South Africa stood at 34.9%. Mathew, are you back with me? All right, Mathew, so much. Thank you so much for hanging in there. So I just want to still get back. Do you have any concerns as to the main aims or the way that the bill goes about in trying to settle the terms of equity and equality for South Africa when it comes to employment and labor?
Ooh, sorry, the signal was, again, a bit problematic there. Can you repeat the question?
No problem. So do you have any concerns about how the bill lays out its duties as well as the powers given to the minister?
Not immediately. I mean, unfortunately, with the changes in legislation such as this, it is very much always reactive more than proactive. As far as the legislature can go, as far as anticipating issues that may arise or foreshadowing issues that may arise, the practical implementation of these changes can really only be addressed as and when the bill or the amended legislation comes into effect. as you can see now, the former or the current legislation that's in place failed to meet the expectations and requirements of the legislature, to the point that now an amendment bill has been brought forward. So the powers conferred to the minister in this respect, as I say, it may actually hold employers to their word. As I say, the bill still requires employers to meet a certain minimum requirement for an equity policy that's implemented in their own businesses or in their own sector. And there's now a body or a line of accountability where a report must be provided on the first day of October, if memory serves, that a report must be given in respect of in compliance with this equity policy that's been implemented by the minister. So in that respect, as I say, it seems that the reins have been given back to the government to ensure that the act is indeed being followed and indeed being dealt with.
Okay. In terms, you mentioned the scarce and critical skills list, and that has also come up in this conversation as well. And one of the questions raised is, if you don't work in this scarce or critical areas as a foreigner, with the new equity bill being pushed forward, does that mean that you would not be employed in South Africa? Would you be denied a job in South Africa if you don't fall under this list that sort of exempts certain people because of the skills they possess?
I don't think it would be a matter of you would be rejected outright. It is definitely a matter of there is a priority given to certain skills or job specifications that the company or the country, would require, to fill the gap or fill the need. And as is with any other country, their migration policies are also come into effect to say that any influx of these persons with these skills or this skill set must be given priority to come in. And that is very much a economic factor that must always be considered when looking at the influx of foreign labor, not necessarily foreign nationals as a whole, but foreign labor. And those factors, as I say, it's very much looking at an economic factor. South Africa, as I say, is not immune to the migration itself. I mean, the majority of our skilled labor does leave as well,
yes.
to as they like to say, greener pastures. And that egress of labor must be met with an influx to counteract it. And as I say, if doctors leave South Africa in mass, we then need an influx of doctors to start caring for our medical sectors and so forth. So the priority given wouldn't necessarily be a matter of, because you don't meet those requirements, you're barred or forbidden from coming to the country. It is just a factor that is taken into account to deal with the labor issues and economic issues that the country is trying to handle or deal with at that instance.
Okay, yes. So let's also look at something about the digital labor platform that the bill also pushes forward. Now, it's seeking to expand the scope of the act, which will cover both employees and workers, and introduce this concept of a digital labor platform, which is said to be an electronic entity that enables the provision of work or services by a person to any other person in the Republic. So that, for many people, is just, it's not actually giving them an idea of what this digital labor platform is all about. So try to break that down for us. Is this talking about the ride-hailing companies? What is it talking about?
Yeah, so the prime example or the go-to case study for that is the Uber e-hailing platform. And it has gained controversy in South Africa, especially with our labor laws and our basic conditions of employment, especially in the light of people being dismissed almost without due diligence or due diligence or proper process being followed. I know the one amendment or the one change that they would like to bring is that again, going back to the Uber example, that a Uber driver is not summarily dismissed without any form of due diligence or sort of process or even written notice of their termination. It has come out that certain drivers are once dismissed or and have received an unfavorable outcome are simply just barred from using the platform. And that seems to be the way that they're informed that they're no longer able to work for Uber or work for whatever e-hailing platform of that particular reference. And that here, the amendment is trying to address and handle the evolution of our labor force. I mean, with COVID, a large amount of workforce has been reallocated to working from home or working remotely at the very least. And that has created a whole different workspace and work environment to which we must now handle and deal with. And as I mentioned earlier, it's always a reactive process more than a proactive process. It can only be dealt with once it's actually put into effect and put into force. Okay. And in that respect, as I say, it does want to bring in certain requirements for these as I call them, digital labor platforms. So minimum wages must now be met. Certain regulatory provisions must be made with regards to wages and receiving of wages and remuneration. And as I said earlier, there must now be a set standard for how employees are handled by these new platforms.
Okay. So finally, Mathew, as we wrap up, I need you to give me this answer very quickly because unfortunately time is not with us. But the policy document is out. The public is invited to give feedback. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen groups like Operation Dudula, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and the Patriotic Front standing on this issue in terms of employment and labor and foreign nationals as well. But in particular, what has the feedback been so far, particularly from small businesses? Because they may likely be the ones who have the most change to make, or at least some level of adjustment to make to this new bill. So very quickly, in about a minute and a half.
So the new bill addresses small companies, small businesses in South Africa, which, especially in South Africa, where informal businesses are quite common in South Africa. So the bill aims to help or address the small businesses in that it will give regulatory provisions to them, or even give them exempt them from certain regulatory provisions, and enable them to grow and so forth. One other aspect is that where there is what they call a small business intervention policy, which will be introduced to assist foreign nationals and foreign workers, where they can be allocated business visas so that they can, as you say, start a business or at that point gain employment. But and again, as I said, that is more effective towards small businesses to promote the economic growth and promote the establishment of new businesses to further develop the economy.
Okay. Mathew, thank you so much. We know that there's going to be more as the public and businesses and groups, invested groups, actually continue to contribute to this. And we'll be looking to see what the updates are, and we'll touch base with you. Thank you so much, Mathew.
No, thank you again for having me.
All right. And it is a conversation that has many different angles. There's also the political side. As I mentioned earlier, we did speak to one of the sponsors of Operation Dudula on Village Square Africa earlier this week. And that's an organization that wants illegal migrant workers out of South Africa as well. Some, like the Economic Freedom Fighters, have turned it into a more violent and physical interaction, as well as the Patriotic Alliance. But all of this comes down to an issue of jobs. 34.9%. That is the official unemployment rate in South Africa, and many put it at more than 50% for the unofficial rate. All of this is back to the economy and how people are able to feed themselves and take care of their families. You're watching Business Edge. Up next is NC4 to watch. And we stay in South Africa as we start with NC4 to watch, the stories we're keeping our eyes on. Eskom has approached energy regulator NERSA for approval for a special pricing agreement that could lead to the reopening of the ArcelorMittal Saldanha steel plant on the Cape West Coast. The nature of its operations will, however, change from the production of high-quality, ultra-thin, hot-rolled coil to processing local scrap metal. Tesla CEO and Pretoria-born Elon Musk is far and away the richest person in the world, according to the recently published Huron Global Rich list for 2022 with a personal fortune of about $205 billion, more than 3 trillion rand. Musk's astonishing rise to become not just the world's richest person, but the first to crack a personal fortune north of $200 billion was powered by the extraordinary rise of electric vehicle market leader Tesla. Asian importers of Russian gas were scrambling on Thursday after Russian President Vladimir Putin said unfriendly countries must pay for Russian gas in rubles in the latest jolt to global energy markets after Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are on the list of countries deemed unfriendly. They all import liquefied natural gas from the LNG projects in eastern Russia. And finally, crude oil prices declined in volatile trading on Thursday as investors assess the potential for new supply in the tight markets amid prospects of a new Iran deal. Brent futures were down 58 cents to $121.02 a barrel, and U.S. WTI futures fell 96 cents to $113.97 a barrel. Both contracts rose $2 and $1 respectively in early trade. And that's the business we have for you right here on Business Edge. You're, of course, watching News Central, where we put Africa first. So stay with us throughout the week, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. West African time, where we put African business, the economy, and finance front and center. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru, Balogun.